Greetings and salutations. I'm myself and terrific. And yourself?
I am doing great, my friend. Absolutely great. I am here to talk with you about the idea of the Übermensch as proposed by Friedrich Nietzsche, and specifically how it applies to today's world, which has been called by some to be the age of the last man. So, could you go into what Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch was?
Yes, from beginning with a quote of Albert Camus that he wrote in the book The Rebel. Quote, Nietzsche clamored for a Roman Caesar with the soul of Christ. To his mind, this was to say yes to both slave and master. But in the last analysis, to say yes to both was to give one's blessing to the stronger of the two, namely the master. Caesar must inevitably renounce the dominion of the mind and choose to rule in the realm of fact. How can one make the best of crime? Asked Nietzsche, as a good professor faithful to his system. Caesar must respond by multiplying it. When the ends are great, Nietzsche wrote to his own detriment. Humanity employs other standards and no longer judges crime as such, even if it restores to the most frightful means. He died in 1900, at the beginning of the century in which that pretension was to become fatal. That is one of multiple approaches
Mm.
of the Übermensch, a Roman Caesar with the soul of Christ. Another perspective is the era of longing, and another one is this vast expansion of an ocean that absorbs polluted rivers that he says and thus spoke Zarathustra of in truth, man is a polluted river man is an ocean that shall absorb polluted of his own polluted rivers.
Mm.
And another perspective is that the Übermensch is the dark clouds and the lightning bolt. But to begin with the first one, a Roman Caesar with the soul of Christ, is something poignant and fitting. A Roman Caesar is this honorable and respected ideal type of Caesar, where he's incomprehensibly has hardship against himself and others. Hardship is an ideal or self-rule, self-governance to a sense. And the soul of Christ is an honorable and respected type of Christ because the soul of Christ is the world that's ever expanding, ever enlarging, and encompasses the entire kingdom of men. That the soul of Christ expands further for the plights and ambitions of men, that it sacrifices itself to be used to the higher species of life, for itself and for others. Zarathustra describe well, he Nietzsche uses the voice of Zarathustra to describe this highest type of value, the
Mm.
Übermensch, a a higher sense of consciousness, innocent consciousness, an affirmation that is on a different plane than other conscious innocent uh, ideals. That's the one perspective. The arrow of longings is poetic but shorter, where a bow and arrow. The the tension and totter of the bow is describing the complex and difficult moments of life. While the bow, you aim for the distant target of your ambition. The arrow is the power, and that power is how you strike and overcome the obstacles that will fly through the air to the distant target.
Mm. So, in the modern world, how does this apply?
This applies on a collective scale when one has the grand emancipation, when they see themselves as innocent again and become a higher self. And that itself is complex. How can one become a higher self? Nietzsche would say that in times of solitude, your true self reveals itself to yourself in a dialectical fashion. Another one is having a pathos of distance or an emotional separation from the crowd, or that your heart turns on you and now you're dispensing or giving your wisdom that's not accessible and expressible in material form, but in metaphysical and immaterial form, advice or tips, for example. Another another one is seeing how one can be granted independence and watching yourself be granted that independence through the minotaur of consciousness, through isolation, through distance, and this form of dissolution of your other self. What I'm saying here is what Nietzsche would coin the term the great contempt, contempting your lower, weaker self that society has labeled you as through before, during, and after your time.
Hmm. So, by your weaker self, that seems like that maps pretty closely onto the persona that most people are forced to adapt in order to make it in modern society, because you have to basically accept the schooling and cultural system squashing you down into a very easily into a compliant unit who will produce and consume in just the right amounts. And the Übermensch archetype is a way out of this. It's a way of breaking this mold, if I understand
Yes,
correctly.
he values the present moment and this world, while the afterworld or the real world is an afterthought. He overcomes nihilism. He uses obstacles as a sign uh, for his success and failure from the results of experimenting and examining for that granted bit of independence. Now, I say granted bit of independence from Nietzsche's denial of the notion of free will and the notion of the ego or the soul superstition, which became the subject and ego superstition. That's a topic for another time. We're concentrating on Übermensch.
Hmm. So last time we talked about the last man archetype and how a lot of modern individuals seem to, I guess, be representations of that archetype. If someone listening is thinking to themselves, all right, what should I do practically? Like, what should I do today in order to move closer to Übermensch as opposed to Last Man? What do you recommend?
Not what I recommend, but what Nietzsche says in
I want to know what
this
you
book.
recommend.
Oh, me first before Nietzsche?
Yeah,
What,
you first.
what I would what I would recommend for people is seeing themselves, not seeing, because that's a bird's eye view. Well, a bird's eye view is necessary for supreme powers, but that would sense that they're different, physically, mentally, and emotionally different from others, with no sense of contempt on themselves of saying, "How am I so different? Where's all this originality come from?" Because it wasn't of the ancestors or your family or chance or God that produced your characteristics. It's from a genealogy of events that have discharged from a a overstock of the will onto you. Or as some people would say, you were not meant to be born, but the universe did what was necessary. It gave birth to you. similar
Mm,
to a Star Wars metaphor.
mm,
Anakin Skywalker, the Force created Anakin Skywalker because of Darth Sidious and Darth Plagueis tampering and manipulating the Force to their will. So the Force's reaction was the birth of Anakin Skywalker.
mm. So, once, let's say someone they're watching this, they're like, "Oh yeah, I guess I don't fit the mold." Um, what? Well, I'm watching videos on Nietzsche instead of say scrolling TikTok and doing silly stuff there. So, what? I mean, after the understanding comes, like, what should someone do?
Simply
What are the
un
first steps, at least?
to simply unlearn what they have learned from Nietzsche and reflect and apply it to their personal life. The application in this sense is, well, he doesn't say of bullying, controlling, and dictating other people. That would be selfish and foolish at the same time. But unlearning what you learned of him to reflect in your personal time or in solitude to clean and flush out the uncleanliness of society that is progressively absorbing you to be faceless and mindless. Because in your mind, you are the black sheep in a flock of white.
Mm. All right, now you can go for Nietzsche. What Nietzsche said.
What he would describe now, because Zarathustra has entered the city Pied Cow, which that itself is poetic. He says, quote, "Behold, I teach you the Superman," or this is the English translation, so I'll say Overman. Overman. The Overman is the meaning of the earth. Let your will say the Overman shall be the meaning of the earth. I entreat you, my brothers, remain true to the earth, and do not believe those who speak of you of superterrestrial hopes. They are poisoners, whether they know it or not. They are despisers of life, atrophying and self-poisoned men, of whom the earth is weary, so let them be gone. Once blasphemy against God was the greatest blasphemy, but God died. And thereupon these blasphemers died too. To blaspheme the earth is now the most dreadful offense, and to esteem the bowels of this inscrutable more highly than the meaning of the earth. Now he's describing the soul in the next one. The soul wanted the body lean, monstrous, and famished. So the soul thought to escape from the body and from the earth. Now, and then he says, in truth, man is a polluted river. One must be a sea to receive a polluted river and not be defiled. Behold, I teach you the Superman, or the Overman. He is this sea, in him your great contempt to go under. And in the next aphorisms, he'll discuss that this Übermensch is the dark cloud and the lightning bolt. What's that lightning bolt? The will to power.
Mm. All right, Greg. Thank you so much for giving us your overview of the Overman. Hopefully, the listener thought that it was fascinating and might be able to get something out of it. Any last thoughts before we end the recording?
My conclusive thoughts are if I'm vague or not clarifying in some areas, there's the comment section and there's the email attached to the description of sending questions or concerns or simply having a discussion with the brothers of the High Council.
Mm, wonderful, Greg. All right, thank you so much. Amor Fati.
Amor fati. Thank you for watching.